Good morning and welcome. I'm Carol Plumlee, a member of the board at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Reston. Whether you are on Zoom or here in the church sanctuary, we are so glad to have you with us this morning. No matter how old or how young you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, however you identify and whomever you love, know you are welcome here today. We have a couple special announcements this morning. The choir is inviting all people ages 6 and up to join in the closing song for the Stewardship Gala, Raise You Up from Kinky Boots. Attendance at the 2 rehearsals is the only commitment needed and no experience is required. Please email Cynthia Young, cynthia@uureston.org to get all the details and come join the fun. For those of you who are here in person, there's a sign-up sheet in the East Foyer for anyone interested, so you can email Cynthia or sign up in the East Foyer, and she will contact you. The UUCR annual meeting will be held next Sunday, February 26th. It will begin 15 minutes after the service ends. The annual meeting includes the election of board members, board officers, leadership council members at large, and nominating committee members. All are encouraged to attend. We must have a quorum to vote. A meeting notice letter with the meeting agenda and the election slate was recently mailed to all church members. More information is online at uureston.org annual meeting. There will be a poetry and prose night. It's going to be happening March 4th. And if you have some poetry or prose that you would like to share on this evening, please send your work to Tim Norton or Julia Norgard. Julia does have the information on a flyer. You can get more information from her about poetry and prose night. Now let us center ourselves for worship. Please take some deep, quieting breaths with me. Let us enter our time of worship together as we listen to this morning's prelude.
Choir will be singing the prelude this morning, which is a South African song in the Xhosa language. It's called Kilo Kilo. It's by a jazz composer, Alan Salinga. And the words of the song mean, I heard a beautiful voice singing, and I approached and looked, and I saw a lovely bird with red and white wings. And the beautiful voice made the world around me just disappear.
Oh Thank you, choir. Our opening words this morning come from one of the great Universalist ministers of the 20th century, the Reverend Dr. Gordon McKeeman. We summon ourselves this hour from the demands and delights of the daily routine, from the dirty dishes and unwaxed floors, from the unmowed grass and untrimmed bushes, from all the incompletenesses and not yet startednesses, from the unholy and all the unresolved. We summon ourselves this hour to attend to our vision of peace and justice, of cleanliness and health, of delight and devotion, of the lovely and the holy, who we are and what we can do. We summon the power of tradition and the exhilaration of newness, the wisdom of the ages and the knowing of the very young. We summon beauty, eloquence, poetry, music to be the bearers of our dreams. We would open our eyes, our ears, our minds, our hearts to the amplest dimensions of life. It is good to be together.
Our opening hymn today is number 347, Gather the Spirit. So please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing.
Today's chalice lighting words come to us from Maya Angelou. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so that you can know who you are, what you can rise from, and how you can still come out of it.
At UUCR, we have a long-held tradition of singing our covenant together every Sunday. Love is the spirit of this church. As always, if you are at home on Zoom, we hope you will sing along with us. The words will appear here on the screen. They're also in your order of service. Let's remain seated as we sing our covenant together.
Good morning. Today we'll be doing an experiment together through the magic of AV. So find a place where you can see the screen. I have some rocks and some water. Which do you think is stronger? When I pour the water on the rocks, it flows around them. The rocks stay in place and the water changes to move around these barriers. In our lives, we often face challenges and barriers, like those rocks. We can get angry and refuse to change or adapt to these challenges, or we can accept the difficulties we face and work with and around them. I wonder which you prefer to do. There's not necessarily a correct answer. People make different choices when they face obstacles, and one choice is not the best in every situation. However, as much as we might want to, refusing to ever accept difficulties and refusing to ever change can make life even harder, right? Because of this reality, there is a whole religion that focuses on being like water and flowing with life. This is Taoism, which originated in China. In English, it may be spelled with a D or a T. The waterfall being pulled down by gravity is an illustration of the idea of flowing with what happens in life rather than fighting it. Today, Reverend Scott will be talking about resilience, bouncing back when something that we think of as bad happens. Resilience is a trait or characteristic within us that helps us keep moving forward when what happens around us changes or when we face challenges. We can strengthen our resilience with practice as we find ways to work with those changes and challenges. I invite you to try something with me that may help with this. Let's try breathing, feeling our feelings, and then letting the feelings go. Take a deep breath in through your nose and tighten up your body as if you're worried or angry. Then breathe out through your mouth and relax your body. It may take 3 or more times to relax and let go of really big feelings. But after you do that, it's easier to think of different ways you can respond to a difficult situation. You can also talk to your adult or friends or a counselor for more ideas. Earlier, I asked whether you thought that stone or water is stronger. In our experiment, stone seemed stronger, didn't it? The rocks stayed put and the water had to go around them. Does that make us stronger if we are like the rocks and never give in or adapt? This is a photo of the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon. Over 5 to 6 million years, the water in the river has carved away the rock, turning a fairly flat plateau, which is high but flat land, into a canyon with steep sides cut by the river. So, now looking at the canyon, which do you think is strongest, stone or water? Again, there may not be a correct answer, but there is strength in water, isn't there? There is strength in flowing with life, accepting and adapting to changes and difficulties. I wonder what would happen if you and I tried to be a little more like the water. We will now sing the children out with Go With Joy. The words will be projected here.
Good morning. I'm here to share why UUCR means so much to me. My husband, Jim Binkley, and I joined this church in 2018 after attending UUCF for about 13 years. We were attracted here by the smaller size and the more intimate atmosphere. We felt it would be beneficial to be in a caring committee with like-minded people, especially as we aged. Perhaps it was during his long illness, followed by his death 15 months ago, that the true value of UUCR really resonated with me. I felt very supported and cared for by my somewhat new friends here, as well as by the staff and caring committee members. I continue to be grateful for Reverend Scott, Cynthia, Amelia, and Beth for helping me to bring to fruition the rather complex memorial service that Jim designed for himself. He was very type A, maybe, and he knew what he wanted, and it was my last big gift to him. After losing my longtime partner and with many family members living afar, I sensed the importance of broadening my horizons and increasing the number of contacts that I had locally. I had friends here and there, but I was so involved with my daughter and my husband that I hadn't developed as many local people as I thought I should. I became a more regular at Juliet's events and auction dinners and increased my attendance at other UUCR activities. Although I've never considered myself a committee person, I decided it was time to give back to this congregation after getting so much from them. So I succumbed to Board President Holly Anderson's appeal to to assume a committee role. She said, Fran, we're going to wait until you finish grieving, and then we're going to give you some choices. So I became treasurer of the capital campaign and a member of the finance committee, and I got to know others beyond just seeing them at Sunday services. While evaluating various colleges, my somewhat quirky but outstanding 17-year-old granddaughter, Tabitha, said, I want to find a place that has my kind of people. She has said this about summer programs and more. She is a little different, but I love her. As I continue to get to know more of you UCRs, I realize I've found the place with my kind of people. It is here, and I plan to contribute more during this pledge season. Consider joining me in this regard, as well as for volunteering for some of the many roles that it takes to make this fine institution succeed, and in the process, get to know more people at UUCR. Try it, you might like it. Thank you.
And we would not have had such a wildly successful capital campaign without Fran. She helped us go way over the top. So now is the time in our service when we share our joys and concerns so that no one has to hold them alone. If you are joining us remotely this morning, you may wish to light a virtual or real candle to mark what is on your heart this morning as members of the present congregation come forward with the stone and water ritual, picking up a stone for each joy or sorrow they have and placing it in the vessel which holds so much of our love. And they can take a stone from around the vessel if they wish to remind themselves this week what is on their hearts. And if those of you at home would like to share with others online what is going on in your life, please do so. But remember that whatever you type there does become public. So let us now begin our ritual at home and here as the accompanist plays our music. Yes. Let us be one in prayer and spirit. Spirit of life and love, which so faithfully animates this complex and troubled creation of ours, we are grateful for this community that remains with us in both times of joy and sorrow. We hold in our hearts this morning all who are facing hardship or difficulty, those in grief, facing illness, loss, or disability in themselves or those around them. In particular, of course, our hearts continue to go out to the countless thousands of people in Syria and Turkey still recovering from this terrible, terrible earthquake. Whether shared here this morning or held silently in our hearts, may our joys be multiplied in community, and may all gathered here find comfort and calm amidst their sorrows. Amen.
As a self-funded church, UUCR relies on the generosity of its members and friends to fund daily operations and to ensure that the church and its resources are here for us and others now and in the future. Pledges support our worship and music programs, our religious education programs for members and friends, community outreach, and connections to Unitarian Universalism. We now invite you to support the work of UU Reston by making your donation to the collection plate if you're here in the sanctuary, or at the link on the slide and in the chat box. Thank you for your generosity and support of our beloved spiritual home.
Kate, thank you so much. It's what she gets for growing up in this church. My reading before this morning's sermon comes from a book entitled Learning to Fall, The Blessings of an Imperfect Life by Philip Simons. He was a UU essayist who tragically died in 2002 at the age of 42 from Lou Gehrig's disease. But before the disease got really bad, he wrote, "It has been almost 4 years since I was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, a degenerative and ultimately fatal neurological disease with no effective treatment or cure. As the disease has progressed in my body, and as my disabilities steadily have grown, I have had to do the work of learning to live richly in the face of loss, work which I call learning to fall." And then he goes on, "Actors and stuntmen learn to fall. Athletes learn to fall. Devotees of the martial arts learn to fall, as do rock climbers and dancers. Mostly, though, we learn to do it badly, but it is not falling as much as climbing. Our birth is not falling as much as climbing our birthright, right?" Then he goes on, "We have all suffered and will suffer our own falls. The fall from youthful ideals, the waning of physical strength, the failure of a cherished hope, the loss of our near and dear, the fall into injury or sickness, and later or soon, the fall to our certain ends. We have no choice," he writes, "but to fall, and little to say as to the time and means." Then he writes, "My balance is not so good these days, and a short time before I began work on this book last summer, I fell on the short path that leads through the woods from our driveway to the house. I had just helped my 6-year-old daughter into the car and turned to start down the path when I stumbled and went down hard. I lay there stunned for a few moments, face numb, lip bleeding, chest bruised. My daughter, Amelia, standing over me, asking quite reasonably what I was doing down there and whether I was all right. I wish I could have managed an answer such as, 'I'm practicing my yoga,' or 'I'm listening for hoofbeats.' What I was doing was learning to fall. In the days that followed this hard fall, I thought about the Buddhist practice of walking meditation, in which one becomes fully mindful of each step placed upon the earth. One of the blessings of my current stumbling condition is that I must practice this meditation continually, becoming mindful where I was once heedless. To walk upright upon the earth, what a blessing." And then Simons concludes, "We are all of us falling. We are all now this moment in the midst of that descent, fallen from heights that may now seem only a dimly remembered dream, falling toward a depth we can only imagine, glimpsed beneath the water's surface shimmer. And so let us pray that if we are falling from grace, dear God, let us also fall with grace, to grace. If we are falling toward pain and weakness, let us all also fall toward sweetness and strength. If we are falling toward death, let us also fall toward life." I've been thinking a lot about falling lately. First and foremost, because I'm personally so good at it, especially in my cycling life. Now, I did not fall yesterday off my bike on the Mount Vernon Trail when I hit a crack, and I'm all sore this morning with my ankle. I did not fall for the benefit of proving this sermon. I took a hard fall yesterday off my bike for the first time in several months. But over my cycling career, I have fallen. I've broken ribs twice, a wrist. I've scuffed by the way, yesterday's fall wasn't so bad because I had 3 to 4 layers of winter clothing on. I got no road rash yesterday because I was so bundled up, but I woke up this morning pretty damn sore. But anyway, over the 20 years of my cycling career, I've fallen many times. The most famous occurred when I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, on my 3rd cross-country charity ride. I fell in the desert when a bunch of us collided in a 45-mile-an-hour headwind, and I had to go home for a few days, but then I decided I could finish the ride even with broken ribs, so I flew back to Springfield, Illinois, and finished the ride. And a woman in town, and this got in the newspaper, and a woman said, well, if Reverend Alexander can ride with broken ribs, I'll give $20,000 more. But let's make it a challenge. We have $40,000 more because I fell off my damn bike. So, but generally speaking, falling off my bike has no existential or spiritual benefit other than to remind me of what the truth that Philip Simmons was saying. So let me tell you firsthand, to cycle is to fall. And the larger, more spiritual point, which Philip Simmons is so beautifully making in the reading this morning, is that simply to live is to fall. I quote him again. We have all suffered and will suffer our own falls. The fall from youthful ideals, the waning of physical strength, the failure of a cherished hope, the loss of near and dear, the fall. Whoops, what have I got? I've got to go from page 8, there's 9. Okay, fall into, every minister's nightmare, 8 follows 10, right? The fall into injury or sickness, and later or sooner, the fall to our certain ends. We have no choice but to fall, and little to say about the time or the means. This morning, I want to begin exploring this powerful truth about falling in life at the most literal and concrete level. We Americans slip and fall at home, at work, on sidewalks, in restaurants and parking lots, churches and schools with tragic and painful frequency. Did you know that it is estimated each year in this country over 8 million people injure themselves seriously in slip and fall accidents, and 540,000 of which every year, more than 500,000, require hospitalization? And did you further know, and this statistic shocked me when I first saw it, that more than 20,000 Americans die each year from falls? That's 55 Americans every single day, making falling the second greatest cause of accidental death and disability next to automobile accidents. As a minister, I've served 6 congregations over the last 50 years, and I've become painfully aware of the dangers of people falling and hurting themselves. Countless members of the congregations I have served have fallen very badly. One member in River Road, she tripped coming down her stairs on the way to lunch with some of her church girlfriends, broke her neck, and died from that fall. And at Vero Beach, we had a young mother who seriously damaged herself on a little one step down at the church curb, very seriously injured herself. Now, I know this may sound a little too practical for church, but would you please be careful to prevent falling at home and other venues you frequent? I have 60 copies of Preventing Falls at Home and Elsewhere. And if you go online, there's all kinds of worksheets about how to prevent falls in your life. Things like loose rugs and all kinds of cords stretched across where you shouldn't be. These copies are right outside the sanctuary, or just go online and Google Preventing Falls at Home and Elsewhere, and you'll get lots of information. Now, I know full well that most times we fall, we look back on the event like I did yesterday after my fall. That crack, the root crack was kind of in the shadows. I didn't really see it. I wasn't really looking for it. Down I went. You almost always look back on the event and kick yourselves for not paying more attention. We always feel stupid and foolish when we fall and say, how did I do that? And please look at the info that I left out on the table. Spend a few minutes looking at these practical recommendations. Church is on the spiritual plane, but it also should be on the practical level. So don't trip yourself up unnecessarily. But making our homes and our institutions a bit safer is not, of course, the main point of my sermon this morning. As I've already said, what I really want to talk to you about in this religious community is the inevitability of falling in the larger, more encompassing spiritual sense of the word. As Philip Simons writes in this morning's reading, now I don't want to discourage any of you about the nature of life this morning. It is always important to remember, particularly when we talk about life's dangers and diminishments, that life on this planet is also filled, of course, with countless wonders and blessings and graces. As complex and difficult and tragic as life can be, it is also literally filled with so much ease and enjoyment. And most of the time, we go through life skating on a beautiful ice pond and don't find a hole right in the middle waiting for us. Though under the press and demands of daily living, we also tend to forget how routinely, generously and joyously and well things go in our lives. But one of the key reasons we come together spiritually every Sunday is to remind ourselves and to give thanks, as I mentioned last Sunday in my sermon on gratitude, for all the many ways we are routinely blessed in our life. Every day, faithfully, the sun comes up and darling babies are born and children bound off happily to school and friends fill Starbucks with excited, caring chatter, and coworkers laugh while sharing bologna sandwiches at lunch, if anybody eats bologna anymore. That was an ad lib. I don't have bologna in here. Mozart is enjoyed by countless persons. Books are savored. And after perhaps enjoying a bit of Stephen Colbert's humor, lovers snuggle their way back into the embrace of sleep. Every ordinary day we are showered with saving blessings. But it is also true, and that's what I'm reminding you of this morning, that life also regularly trips us up. Again, to live in a creation as open and fluid and random and dangerous as this one is to fall. Sooner or later, we all fall into some measure of pain and sorrow and diminishment and loss, as Simons suggests. Has there ever been anyone anywhere who has been lucky or clever enough to sail all the way through a long and fulfilling life without falling? No. No one to my knowledge. Falling, having to deal with diminishment and loss, is universal. It is, of course, built right into the structure of this universe. Falling is a law of nature itself. So the spiritual question, it seems to me, is not do we fall? We all do. The question is, how do we respond physically, emotionally, and most importantly, spiritually, when we suddenly find ourselves, as Simmons did, face down in the dirt with a bleeding nose? How do we learn, as a matter of the human heart, to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and get back into the game of our own imperfect, challenging, complicated lives? Well, those of you who have been attending this church for the last 18 months that I've been the minister probably know what I'm about to say. You know, there's a famous thing about you should never say, 10 things you should never say to a minister in the reception line. One of them is somebody came through and said, "Reverend, I enjoyed that sermon, just like I do every time you preach it." One of the constant themes, let's see that first slide if we can. One of the constant themes of my ministry among you, oh, okay, I had another slide here, but there we go. This is the fifth installment of my winter-spring sermon series, 12 Gates to the City. what spiritual qualities will allow you to enter the holy city of your life. The spiritual key, it seems to me, in moving on successfully from a fall, any kind of fall, is to possess a stoical yet supple heart. If you are able to have a stoical yet supple heart after you've fallen in any one of the ways we do, you will, after the inevitable period of emotional and a spiritual adjustment, like Fran mentioned with the loss of her husband, you'll be able to begin moving again with creativity and purpose and joy and strength that is proper and our birthright as human beings. Now, what do I precisely mean by having or nurturing a stoical yet supple heart? I mean that we must, in logical and spiritual sequence, next slide, first, accept the insistent truth of the fall that we have suffered. And second, adapt in the heart mostly, in order to get our lives moving again in light of the new information we have been given about what is now possible and perhaps of even more importance, not any longer possible for us. The ancient Greeks, of course, understood all of this, and they had a philosophical word for it. They called it Stoicism. Now, Stoicism, as the Greeks originally meant it, is not what the word has generally come to mean in common parlance today. That quality, often particularly ascribed to the generally unflappable people of the British Isles, as simply having a stiff upper lip. The Reverend Dr. Edward Frost, who was a good friend of mine, who went through the Blitz in England and came to America, said that on one of his trips back to an English church, he met this English fellow, who was a most unfortunate man. It seemed that the poor man had lost his job when his factory closed. His wife divorced him, his dog died, and then his house burned down. When Edward consoled the man, said, "Dear fellow, how terrible, I feel so sorry for you," the man responded, next slide, with typical stoicism, "Well, it's not so bad, actually. I'm riding the crest of the trough." Now, this is not exactly classic Stoicism. To be a Stoic in the original Greek sense does not mean that you are absurdly unemotional or brave. It simply means that you face the inevitable complications, setbacks, and falls of life. You find the spiritual wisdom and maturity, and yes, the calm of the human heart, to accept the laws of nature. That's what Stoicism really means. Accepting the laws of nature as they have played themselves out quite naturally in your life. It really comes down, dear friends, to the spiritual choice that you and I are free to make. After any loss or diminishment in your life, say getting a disease like Lou Gehrig's, you can either rail against or refuse what is and resent how unpredictable and hard life has been to you, or you can work spiritually to keep yourself open to the life and possibilities that are still yours and begin moving forward again toward the richness and joy that may await you. Having a stoical heart, then, means that when you fall, in any of the unwelcome ways we stumble and are hurt in life, you accept it as a natural and predictable part of your life. Let me put this all another spiritual way. Being stoical in the true original Greek sense means that you do not take difficulties that come your way personally. The Stoic knows and trusts that life is not out to get me, but rather that periodic hardships and falls are simply the way life is on this planet for everyone sooner or later. So if you have a stoical heart, you don't ask that timelessly tempting self-pitying question, why me? Why did this happen to me? To which there's never an acceptable answer. No, you ask Philip Simon's braver question, how can I live richly and well in the face of this loss? Now, being truly stoical and accepting of new information about what is going to be the new shape of our lives, and then moving with life-giving suppleness of heart and being, can really be hard spiritual work. When we take a hard fall of any sort, at work or home, in a relationship like a marriage, or with a child you're having problems with, the first thing we want to do is deny, refuse, and complain. That's what human beings naturally do when loss and limitation pour over them. But eventually, if we are to succeed in our lives, I am convinced, and move ahead with the grace and purpose proper to a human being, we must be eventually able to say to ourselves and mean things like these. Now I am a person living with cancer. Knowing and accepting this, how can I live richly and well? Or, now I am a person who will never achieve my once dreamed of career goal. Knowing and accepting this, how can I live richly and well? Or, now I am a parent with a child who will struggle her whole life with mental illness. Knowing and accepting this, how can I go on? Or, now I am a person confined to a walker. Knowing this, accepting this, how can I live richly and well? Or, now I am someone who is lost and must live without the love of my life. Knowing and accepting this, how can I live richly or well? Or, now 20 years out, I'm in a marriage I will not leave, but one which cannot satisfy some of my most basic needs. Knowing this, how can I live richly and well? Or, now I must live with less and with much loss, more loss than I ever dreamed would be required of me. Knowing this, how can I live richly and well? These are examples of what it means in the face of life's inevitable losses and limitations to have a stoical yet supple heart. We need to first accept in our heads the impersonal laws of nature. You know, there's a saying in the gay community, stop it, Mary, this isn't about you. Well, that's what I'm saying to all of us. The tragedies of life that swirl around you, they're not about you. They're about the laws of nature and about the unfair and unwelcome ways that our world so often unfolds. So once we accept that these things happen, and not personally, we adapt in our hearts, realigning our expectations and behaviors to move ahead creatively and purposefully in the diminished lives we now possess. Over recent years, there have been a number of exhaustive studies by psychologists and others, social scientists, of what makes for strong, happy, and successful human beings over a lifetime, most especially as we age and face disabilities and loss. All these studies, every last one of them, in various ways conclude that the one quality of human being that goes furthest to determine how well a person will do in navigating all the complexities of life, one word, adaptability. These scientific studies all support what I'm saying to you spiritually this morning. Possessing an adaptable, supple heart, possessing a heart that is willing and able to align itself and conform with the new information about what is possible in your life, and finding fresh new channels of living like Linda described with the water going around the rocks. This is what makes for success and for contented living. One image that may, and again, this image of the water in the mountain stream is just crucial to help you understand the Taoist concept about adapting your life around the obstacles and the hard places. Human beings, you and I, must find fresh channels of living when the channel we thought we were in is blocked, and everything is discombobulated for a while, and we find that we need a new path down to the sea, if you will, which all streams seek, down to the fulfillment of the ocean. I know I've told you about this guy once before. On the weekends, I sometimes ride up the Capitol Crescent Trail or up Rock Creek Park, and I see this guy on a special bike. Could you show that next thing? And you've probably, anybody who's done serious cycling, this guy has a bike where he pedals with his hands. Now, why does he pedal with his hands? Not because that's a preferred cycling position. No, he's a paraplegic. He can't cycle with his legs. Now, I don't know what grievous injury this man experienced to not be able to use his legs, but he has a supple heart. I see this guy with a smile so big on his face that if there were bugs coming at it, they'd be stuck on his teeth. He's just roaring along, feeling so happy to be a cyclist. And I, who's able still yet to be upright, don't need a tricycle yet. My fall yesterday, I could have hurt myself badly and maybe needed one of these anyway. I just admire this guy. He is just as happy as a clam. And he said to himself, okay, now I'm a guy without working legs. So how can I do the cycling I love? And he found an answer. Again, the words of Philip Simmons. This book is for everyone who has lived long enough to discover that life is both more and less than we hoped for. We've known Earth's pleasures, sunlight on a freshly mowed lawn, leaves trembling in rain, a child's laughter, the sight of a lover stepping from the bath. We've also seen marriages sour and careers crash. We've seen children lost to illness and accidents. But beyond the dualities of feast and famine, we've glimpsed something else. The blessings shaken out of an imperfect life, like fruit from a blighted tree. And then he goes on, and this to me is Philip Simmons' epitaph to us all. Because of my ALS, I could no longer hike the high mountain ridges that surround my New Hampshire home, but I can take my wheelchair up on a mountain road and smell the balsam fir. It's all a matter of perspective. What does the snail say when riding on the turtle's back? Whee! Well, he says, that's me. Whee! And then he ends. In my dying, I am learning to accept the world with its madness and mayhem, but also its music. Right now, with my weakened arms, I can barely lift a Kleenex to blow my nose, but I can still sit with my son as he identifies the broad-winged hawk circling over our field. I have been learning to live richly in the face of loss. This is the world I choose to remain in. This is what it means to learn to fall, which I am persuaded is a gateway, perhaps the most important gateway to the holy city of your own life. The whole series of my last 6 months with you, the holy city of your own life, Stoicism. Next time you suddenly find yourself face down after a fall, I pray you, keep your heart open, keep your life moving. Choose to remain in your world. Bring everything you've got left to what you've got left. No matter what diminishment or disappointment comes your way, keep choosing to be fully and finally human, because that is what you were designed from birth in this imperfect, perfect creation designed to be. We are all of us by God human beings. We were intended from the first stirrings of our lives in our mother's wombs for full, rich, and purposeful living. Yes, doors, all kinds of existential doors, are slammed shut in our faces all the time. To live is to fall, sometimes unimaginably painfully. But no matter what doors are closed to us by life, as it naturally and mysteriously unfolds, we are free to move through the arching gateway that is a supple and stoical heart. We are always free to take the next adventurous steps forward, and by so doing, discover the holy and abundant life that still waits just for us. That's all I've got for you this morning. Good morning, and see you tomorrow.
Our closing hymn today is number 368, Now Let Us Sing. This is a zipper song, which means there is one keyword in the song which gets replaced each verse with a new keyword. And I just want to let you know that we are adding a word that is not in the hymnal. And so our second verse, we will add the word strength. And these words will appear above you here. So the choir is going to help us lead. This song has two parts, so you will need to pick a part, either part 1 or part 2, and please join in with us and rise in body or spirit.
And I send you on your way with this thought from poet Donna Markova. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a torch, a promise, a song.
We now extinguish this flame, but not the light of hope and truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry forth in our hearts until we are together again.
We invite our congregants attending worship on Zoom to join us for our virtual Greet Your Neighbor coffee hour today to discuss the service theme and enjoy fellowship with other congregants. The link is in the chat box. We hope you'll use the chat box as a virtual receiving line to leave a message about your appreciation for the worship service. Those here in person are invited to join us for coffee or tea and fellowship. We're going to leave the chairs set up as they were at the beginning of the service, so we ask that you do not stack the chairs, and have a wonderful day.